Let's make it.
We'll call the meeting in order. Would you please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll, please.
Trustee Foley?
Here.
Trustee Myerson?
Here.
Trustee Gecko?
Here.
Trustee Chandler?
Here.
Trustee Fryborn?
Here.
Trustee Giesman?
Here.
President Gilbert?
Here.
Treasurer Zach?
Here.
Attorney Addis?
Here.
Clerk Present.
Approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's properly moved and supported that we approve the agenda as presented. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment on agenda items.
Hello, I'm Patty Thomas. I'm a resident of the village. You know me. I'm against it, totally against it. I stood here a few months ago and was told everything was fine. We were handling things okay. What's changed? We got a Dollar General and we got a few houses coming in. What's going to justify spending $100,000 on a manager? There's nothing to manage. I stood before you and pleaded with you to look into the medical marijuana and to research the marijuana and its benefits. If you put as much time in the research of the benefits of marijuana as you did putting into this village manager, we'd be getting extra taxes, we'd have jobs coming to this village, and we would have more revenue. And then I would say, yeah, then we would need a manager because we would have something to manage. But right now, I'm flat against it. We're already in for $40,000 for what, 7, 8, 9 years on the fire truck, which is a necessity. I'm good with that. But another $100,000 for what? I just don't. I'm against it, and I think putting the time and energy I'm outraged that the time and energy was put into it. I really am. Thank you.
Any others? President Adams. There's a list of 8 items, and I don't necessarily know that they're all in the proper order of discussion. But we're going to start with the one, with item A. What is a village manager? Would someone from the committee like to address that?
Do you want to take it?
I can take it. Or I can at least kick it off. So, I know that this is something that has come up in social media quite a bit about what is the difference between village manager and village president. So I think, my understanding, my interpretation of village manager, the village manager is somebody who handles the day-to-day operations. While Chris, President Dilbert, does an excellent job of running the village as it is right now, understandably so. President Dilbert's role as president is a 2-year elected official, not necessarily meant to be here working full-time, and not necessarily meant to be the manager over all the different functions within the office, the HR, DPW, accounting, all the various roles. Whereas the village manager, that would be one of their primary responsibilities, is being the manager in the office day to day, taking care of business as it's needed. Additionally, the village manager would be working on behalf of council. So the village manager would be responsible for whatever goals and any goals that the council directs the manager to focus on. So if we were to go down this path and get a village manager, if we say that we want them to, look into grant writing, that would be one of the things. If we want them to focus on putting together a economic development for the downtown area, that would be something that we could have them focus on. There's various things that you could have them focus in on. And then, you have them focusing on those tasks every single day. Whereas, President Dilbert, from a president role, is more concerned with, the politics of the village and the social, the social events and being the face of the village. The manager, likewise would go to trade shows and whatnot, but the manager would be more of the background person who's, doing the day-to-day operations. That's my interpretation. By all means, if anybody wants to jump in.
Yeah, if I can add to it, I think, and you hit it on the head, is President Dilbert, more of the face of the village, more of the presidential tasks. I think the one thing that stuck out of my head with the village manager was that the village manager is more of a chief administrative officer. President Dilbert currently has to deal with HR issues, just a whole bunch of different things that, could be better spent with someone who that's their task. The chief administrative officer is something that kind of stuck in my mind when we were going through this.
And I think along those lines too, I would liken it to any good business or any corporation in the sense that you're going to have a CEO, you're going to have a board over that CEO, and then you're going to have stakeholders. In this case, the stakeholders would be the residents, or stockholders, if you would, right? Those would be the residents. They have stock in the village. This is where they live. This is where they call home, right? This is where they pay their taxes, etc. You have a board that creates that direction based on input from the residents, right? You can't have 4,000 residents up here every month, but you can have 7 of us directing the terms of those residents, where they want to go, what they want to do, what they want to see, what kind of growth and opportunity. But then you need somebody to execute that, right? And that's your CEO. That's your village manager. That's that person that puts it into effect and takes on all of those different categories, whether it be economic development, business growth, business opportunity, doesn't matter what type of business opportunity is, but they're going to have to see that through. They're going to have to see the legal ramifications through that. They're also going to have to identify what incorporates and encapsulates those new industries, those new economic development opportunities, those excursions. They're going to have to also monitor the inside and manage those different departments. So if we have public works and we want to do things with the sewer, we want to do things with the water, we want a new construction project or new road improvement project, they're going to facilitate our direction through the channels, basic public works, whether it be the engineer, things like that. And likewise, and in other avenues, whether it be Parks and Rec, whether it be new events, whether it be parades or whatever we want to do here in the village, not only from an economic development, but a social growth perspective, market the village, et cetera, that's your executor, right? That's the person that manages. And then even more and beyond that would be somebody who can keep policy and procedure in place for internal mechanisms, whether it be accounting, whether it be things having to do with this building, whether it be the building department, maybe we change codes, maybe we upgrade the codes, maybe we go to a different year on the codes, maybe we enforce more of the blight, right? So maybe we look at the code enforcement. That person would fall into them, and they could manage them to do a lot more because they're there on a day-to-day basis. And the last thing I would say is that we're all elected. We can go at any time. Whereas you have continuity and consistency in the office over those other departments. Whether you choose to bring this person on for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, you're still allowing for some of that consistency, and you have a go-to person to funnel, whether it's the issues going up or the direction coming down, but it's coming through that conduit. And so that's what I would say from a village manager perspective.
Any others? Item B. Task village manager. I'm not sure what.
I'm just going to bring everybody up to speed on where we've been, what we've done so far, and then get
Did you want the
Attorney
information on the
Addis's.
past village manager?
yeah. Is that ours?
Well, it's new.
No, I said Grand Rapids.
What year?
93,
93. Terry, I remember him.
that was the guy.
Yep.
Man, is this from your uncle?
I have many sources.
I was gonna say, he does keep some articles.
Since we brought up Gary Carey, this is one concern that I've voiced more than once. And if I recall the history and the chain of events, he left on bad terms. One of the biggest issues that he faced was that he was being micromanaged by elected officials. And I said this more than once, that individually, we can't micromanage. As a board, we can set direction, establish policy, create this vision, but we can't micromanage. He's not gonna, he or she should not take 15 phone calls a day from individuals.
Or 30 emails.
Or 30 emails. It just won't work. It just won't work.
Who was Hool?
Leonard Hool, he acted as a village manager back in the late 70s, early 80s. Leonard,
Well, what's the difference between an administrator? Is it kind of the same position?
he pretty much acted as the same position.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Leonard Hool he was out of St. Clair County, and for all the good things that Leonard did, the one bad thing he did is that he bought into, back in the day, when urban renewal, urban development was the buzz.
Catchphrase, yeah.
Okay, and he convinced the city council at the time to accept this federal money to buy out every business in downtown New Haven. And they bought out every business and they demolished every building, with the exception of the one on the corner of Pasco and Main. And the promise was that the feds would also provide money to rebuild. Well, the demo money came, the rebuild money never showed up. Okay. And just to give you a little more history than that, back in show my age now. Back in 1989, I was first elected village president, and I actually hired the first village manager. A young guy, he was out of Lennox Township. His name was Pat Sullivan. He's currently the city manager in Northville. He was actually the first village manager ever officially hired by this village. And Pat stayed around for a couple of years. He became city manager in St. Clair. And then he ended up in Northville, and he's been in Northville now for quite a few years. Matter of fact, I take credit for meeting his wife. I sent him to a conference in Grand Rapids, and that's where he met. But yeah, but like I said, Gary Carey is a prime example of being micromanaged and too many people with their fingers in the pot.
Can I?
Please.
So I totally, absolutely agree that we shouldn't be micromanaging, but I definitely believe that, and actually, I think Mr. Reagan is which direction I think we're going between the two, but I could be wrong on that. I think Mr. Reagan's style, as he kind of introduced himself and talked about how he likes to run the position that he's in his current, at his current place, he seems like he actually, and I actually like this about his style, he likes to get all the input that he can from people. Input, not micromanagement, but he likes to hear from people. He said he likes to hear even from the residents, each and every resident that comes to him. And I think there is value to that. I definitely disagree that I definitely agree with you that we shouldn't be micromanaging, telling them what to do in particular matters. But if there are areas where council members have been, pursuing for a while and just reaching dead end after dead end after dead end, where it just doesn't seem like it should be that way, I don't see the harm in
council members coming to them, aside from once a month at a meeting, but, I'd have a sit down with them or something as scheduling permits, and, just kind of say, hey, I've been working on this, and it's just not coming through. What do you think, and what do you think you can help out with? I think there is value to that, and I think, particularly from hearing him, I thought that was kind of what he likes to run it that way. That's one thing that I'm actually leaning toward, that individual over the other one, if we go that route. So I agree that there should be micromanaging, but I definitely think there's value to be had with having conversations, particularly from council members, but also each and every resident of the community with a village manager.
There will be those opportunities when residents will come into the office and will want to speak to the manager. And that's just, that's going to happen. And, that complaint about, whatever it may be, the barking dog or the tall grass. And, and I'm sure he or she will, hear that complaint and have them fill out a form, and it will go to the proper individual to be acted on. But once again, like I said, the individual cannot receive 15 phone calls and 20 emails a day. There's not enough hours in a day, because he will be totally distracted and not focus on what we give him as the priority, because the priority of this board has to remain the priority. And one individual's sudden priority because someone in his neighborhood is complaining cannot suddenly become the priority. Okay, because there's not that many hours in the day, and this person's going to work, and they're going to work more than a 9 to 5. They're going to work after hours, they're going to work the weekends, and they're going to work whenever they need to work. But at the same time, they're human. And this is one individual who won't have an assistant, who will have to not only act on what we give him, but he still has the responsibility of the other departments. And I would hope that he would set up some sort of monthly, or not monthly, but Monday morning meetings. Every Monday morning, all department heads, we're going to meet here at 9 o'clock. And we're going to see what's on your plate for the week. And we're going to see, what's hot and heavy out there and what I can do to support you. But still expect the department heads to run their departments. So, like I said, that occasional drop in, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, okay. That's fine. But we just can't have, like I said, 15 emails and 15 phone calls a day.
On the subject of the like Monday meetings, not meant to be a reflection on you by any means. Is there any is that type of meeting happening currently with the village, like where the department heads get together on a regular basis?
That was something that I was sending out a email to everyone, and I've tried to give Sandy a break because of this past weekend, working Saturday and Sunday with the auditors. But we were going to start scheduling those Monday morning meetings. Okay, not knowing what's going to happen here tonight, it's something that that her and I have talked about. We just need to get together. Now her and I get together, and I do see the fire chief. I had lunch with the fire chief and the assistant chief the other day, and we talked about a lot of things. Of course, the DPW superintendent, he's sitting at my dinner table right now, so I see him on a regular basis. And most of the time, the wife doesn't like it because we start talking shop, and she doesn't like that. But yes, these are things that need to happen, okay? Because he or she needs to know, at least what's coming up, what's coming down the pike. What are we working on? What are we, just to make sure that the individuals are addressing what's most important to the residents of the village.
This seems like the most appropriate place to bring this up, but in all of our discussions in the past about a village manager, it was said that we had an ordinance already, and now we have something at the table that says we don't. What effect does that have on this process, if any, legally?
I assume that's addressed to me. You know, as Brightmore told me there was an ordinance, we thought there was, we looked. There is a,
Ordinance 239?
it's there, but then it's also repealed.
Yeah.
And you're right, and you may still be right, but it was appealed, and back then the rules on repealing are a little bit different than they are now, but it's repealed. It would be my best legal opinion that you do not have an ordinance. You had one for a long time, and it was repealed. Is the repeal attackable on some ticky-tack legal grounds? Maybe, but my best bet would be you don't have one. And I'm like 90% certain of that, maybe higher. We don't have one.
On that note, but the General Law Village Act still allows us to hire one without a ordinance on the books?
Well, you have to have an ordinance first, and then you gotta create the ordinance and hire. You can do that all at once if you want to.
Sure.
But you have to create the ordinance, and then you have to follow the rules that are in the memo, because we'll do this all at once. This is an old ordinance, and you can only give the city manager, if you just pass an ordinance, only has those duties that the president, the clerk, the treasurer, and you members don't have yourselves. Well, that's pretty narrow. So if you want a, quote, effective, you got to make it larger than that. And when you make it larger than that, it's subject to these deadlines pointed out in this memo.
Are you referring to the 1998 revision that allows council to employ a manager to enter into an employment contract with the manager? The council now may pass an ordinance assigning the manager any administrative duty of the council or the president. So it's no longer restricted to duties that are not performed.
Well, no, if you read it in its totality, only those powers and duties not required by law to be assigned. Okay, then you go down, okay, and you look and you got to read them together. You may provide to give those powers and duties assigning to the manager, going on the council, administrative duty imposed on the village president, the authority to appoint, remove, direct, supervise. You go on through that, then you move down. If you expand the duties, which you have the right to do, then you're subject to the time ordinances. Somebody could appeal it 45 days. None of this kills it. It's just what you have to follow. Okay? So if you want, when I look at what your guys' duties are, and the president's duties, the clerk's duties, and the treasurer's duties, everybody's duties, if you create a manager that's going to go beyond what you guys don't do, currently, you guys do everything, then you've got to give time for, now if no one appeals, it's fine. You're in, but you got to follow the letter of the law because it's by statute, and the statute doesn't give you much room. So here's the answer, simple. Can you make one? Absolutely. Can you vote for one? Absolutely. If someone complains, in the nature of politics, everybody complains, but if they don't, you just follow the rules. But then you have to make the decision, publish notice, what the job's going to be, how they're going to do it, the answer to the council, not to the president, answer only to the council. Then you make your decisions. We worked really hard on this memo to make it as simple as we could so that everybody can understand the process. There might be a lot more to it than this, but quite frankly, if you follow this, whichever way you go, you'll be all right. You'll be legal.
So would we be able to, at this special meeting tonight, if the vote is to, we still want to pursue with the village manager, would we be able to also then direct legal counsel to write up such an ordinance to have ready for the next council?
We can write the ordinance.
It sounds like we at least have a template.
Yeah,
First,
right.
The Michigan Municipal League website has a sample ordinance for manager. You just fill in this was updated in 2015, so it's got all the nice lingo about severability and everything, and it's just, you insert your name there. They have several samples, so it's not like we're reinventing the wheel.
Right.
I mean, because in all transparency, I mean, I'm probably going to be a no vote, but I would hate to see it get either delayed or thrown off the table due to technicality. So, I mean, if the will of the council is to vote for it, I would hope that we, in the same meeting then, you know, without further delay, hopefully directly the council will form that ordinance.
It's not reinventing the wheel, I agree.
So with that being said, any other comments?
Well, one question I have, in the memo, it says that if a petition is opposed, you have to get 10%, right? It's not just one person who's opposed to it.
No.
That stops the process.
No, it's 10%.
Right.
But you gotta count your voters.
Right.
It's 10% here is not a lot of people.
Right.
That's the cautionary tale.
Sure.
But one person, no.
No, 10% would be 400, right?
No.
No,
It's
12, 50.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because it's 12.
Yeah, 5-year-olds
60,
don't vote, yeah.
That's right. That's right, not a population. But possibly 120.
or less.
Or less.
Is it 10% of registered voters or 10% who participated in the last election?
It says of the population. Well, at least your guys.
Yeah, the population normally means in the common law, and this is an old thing, the voting population. So you probably go back to the last vote.
Okay. With that being said, the motion's in order.
Well, I think
Are we going
we just
to?
had clause C and D and all that, right?
Well, item B talks about an ordinance.
I make a motion that the attorney draft an ordinance for approval at the next council meeting for village manager.
Support.
Been properly moved and supported that the attorney draft the ordinance, a village manager ordinance to present it at the next meeting. Any questions on the motion?
Is there going to be another motion after this one?
There's at least 3 other action items on here.
Okay.
Technically, we haven't
Right, after, yeah.
voted to approve.
So point of clarification though, if the ordinance, if this does pass, the ordinance is drafted for the next meeting, do we have to take another motion at that meeting? Or do we just accept
So accept the
your,
ordinance.
the ordinance as written? What's the, just so everybody understands what they're voting on.
You'd have to approve the ordinance. You always have to approve an ordinance.
Right.
You don't want to give me that kind of authority.
No.
I'll take the shot.
But I just want to make sure that people then will vote again on that ordinance, just so you're aware.
To accept the ordinance.
Yeah.
To accept the ordinance.
Maybe we can get
Right.
copies for review before the meeting.
And then if that ordinance is accepted and voted on, or voted on and accepted, then that becomes that day or the next day you post, and then it's 45 calendar days?
That would be my reading.
Okay. Without but they only have 45 days
There's
to
opposition.
get 10%.
That's right.
Right. Okay. And then if that is not met, it moves forward. If it does receive opposition, it goes to election. Correct.
Correct.
We would not make the next election. Just FYI, looking at May.
Any other questions?
So this motion is just to draft the ordinance and that's it?
That's it. Draft the
It
ordinance.
costs nothing extra to do so?
Draft the ordinance.
It will cost nothing extra.
I knew the answer, I must have to say it. but-
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Item C, recap of action taken so far. Didn't we do that on the page?
RFPs and whatnot?
Yeah, so recap of the action taken so far, as y'all are probably aware, we had the RFP that we posted We then collected all the responses that were received. There was about 12 responses, I believe, give or take one or two. Out of the 12, we whittled that down. The committee, Trustee Hashik, Trustee Chandler, and myself went and whittled that down to 4 candidates, 2 of which dropped out before we could present them to the council meeting because they had found other positions or had promotions within their own department or village or city that they work in. So we are at that point now where we have 2 candidates that we had interviewed. The committee would like to move forward with 1, and then based off of the results of this meeting, we'll see where we go.
Okay. Item D. Let's move item D down to after G.
Yeah,
No need to talk about profiles until,
if we haven't.
item E, pros and cons.
I'll kick it off. I think, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I think obviously the biggest con is cost. This is something that we're, as one of the residents in the room brought up, this is a $100,000, give or take, with benefits and everything, salary and benefits, cost to the village. On the flip side, I think that it wouldn't take much for the village manager to secure their reasoning for existing in the village. $100,000 being found with either grant money or although unlikely, or just efficiency improvements, standardization improvements, making sure that things don't happen in the village moving forward, things that we've dealt with in the past. I think that $100 can be offset pretty easily. We look at one of our favorite costs that we have every month with Ryan Smith. That's $5,000 a month, and it really that's a good chunk of what the village manager's salary would be. So at the end of all these audits, if we no longer have to worry about paying for Ryan Smith, that would definitely offset the cost of the village manager. Some of the other pros that were already mentioned as far as what is a village manager, you have the consistency sake, that you have somebody who's working on behalf of the village and on a contract basis, and to be frank, they don't have any political motivation. Anybody that comes to any of us on council, whether we like to admit it or not, human nature is that we are all politically motivated. We have to run again in so many years. This person does not. They have to answer to council, but ultimately they can make the hard decision and not have to worry about what the political fallout is based on their decisions. It's something to consider. The consistency sake, because they're here longer than a regular term, hopefully you have somebody here that's working and managing the village, and you don't have, newcomers that come in, myself, definitely one of the newest member on council, that isn't familiar with things and trying to make decisions. You have somebody here who's consistent, year after year. If the whole council gets wiped out for, whatever happens, there's still the village manager that's here, still operating and taking care of business. Those are just some pros and cons that come to mind.
Being here now, I'm into my 4th year sitting in this seat, and I know where we've been, and I fully understand where we're at. With the people that we have in place, and primarily Sandy, and the work that she's accomplished, the work that she's identified, it seems that one of the responsibilities that I saw in the post was accounting and setting the budget. So now we got two people who's gonna set the budget, who's gonna do the accounting. There's a major overlap. You know, you talk about efficiencies, we're literally operating, bare bones. I mean, there's no fat. There is no fat. I have a fire department that is struggling. I have a DPW that is at a 1980 level, whereas just 10 years ago, they had twice as many employees. You know, I have an office that's running on 4 people, which is typical. So there is no area to cut any fat, unless you're gonna eliminate Sandy so that he can justify himself. Grant, Sandy goes into state and federal websites on a monthly basis, just seeing if something pops up. Nothing pops up. There's plenty out there for cities. Matching.
Trustees have looked into some grants too, and
There's,
Yeah, there is.
There's one actually.
you know, there's nothing popping up that benefits the village of New Haven. When it comes to grants, typically our engineers are on top of that. On occasion, the DEQ or one of those will free up some money like they did with the SAL grant. And the engineers will jump on that and make us aware of it. So I'm, trust me when I say I'm torn. Like I said, I know back in the day, the benefit that the village managers served the village of New Haven. And yes, you guys have heard me complain about my time. I had 5 meetings, 4 meetings today, but that's fine. I mean, I'm not complaining anymore. You know, I just learned how to go to bed earlier. I'm having a difficult time justifying 100,000, but I would say this with all sense of pride and accomplishment, that if this board decides that this is the route we're going to do, today we can afford it. Yesterday we couldn't. Okay? But now, is it money well spent? I had my friend put a question on Facebook just to see what public, and the public is all over the place besides that 1 or 2 occasional crazies out there who wants to know what my job is. Okay? I mean, I'm the most underpaid, overworked individual in this community. But I didn't sign up for this to be, to make money, I truly believe in public service. Can we afford it? Yes. Is it going to pay the dividends that the people are going to expect? And I would have to say no. Unless something magical happens and the feds start pumping money into the state of Michigan and the state of Michigan get their act together and start releasing funds back to the communities. Is it going to pay the dividend that we're going to expect? Because trust me, I know these personalities. You're going to expect something in return. And right now, I would say you're not going to get the bang for the buck.
And I would have to echo that and respectfully disagree with the $100,000 being easily recouped. I mean, say they get a $100,000 grant. That's something that they would have to do every single year to break even. Even the developments, most of the tax money from developments, either from the Triangle or downtown, go to Lennox. We get a smaller portion of that. So even if we did fully develop that, I still don't see $100,000 a year coming back from that just to break even. Efficiencies, a drop in the bucket. Consistency even, I mean, that's, given the timetables that they say is that the expected length of time for employment is 5 to 7 years, that's a 2-term politician. So, I mean, we have 1, 2, 3 on board now. They're already at that. So, I mean, I don't really see the consistency from a financial point of view. I don't see the return. Things may look better, but it would be similar to like a house of cards, sort of, in my opinion. I mean, it would look great, but unless you can get that return financially, I don't see it being a long-term thing. I mean, if we want to develop something downtown, hire a commission to do that. That's their task, they complete it, they're done.
So here's also, I mean, I've been pretty clear the whole time. I'm a no, but I'm a soft no. Because I do think that there is a possibility, and I'd like to be, I think tonight's vote's probably going to be in support of it. And if so, I'd like to be wrong. I would like it to succeed and whatnot, and I do see a possibility of it happening. But I think it's going to need a more hands-on, proactive, get involved and offer a sense of direction council. I think council for a large part is hands-off. Once a month we see what's presented to us and we go from there. We vote yes or no and we go home. I think to make this position work, and that's again kind of going back to what I said earlier, yes, we don't want to micromanage, but we can, I think there's 7 people that are elected to represent the will of the people, and if 7 people can put their heads together, come up with some ideas and pitch them to the this individual, and then follow up, time to time. Again, not every day, you're right on that, but every couple of weeks, kind of touch base and say, hey, how's this going? I think it can, because you get a new subdivision or whatever the case may be, an apartment complex, tech center or whatever. Yeah, I mean, they can bring in some significant revenue. I think it can be beneficial. But I'd like to, if we go this route, I would really, we got an election coming up, so if I'm part of it, great. If I'm not, that's great. But whoever's on council, I really urge them to be more hands-on, more proactive, and really give this person some support and guidance, direction. Don't just expect them to do their job. Help them out with ideas, help them out with what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've researched. And so again, I'm a no, but I'm a soft no. I think it can be done, but I think we need council to be more proactive, not less proactive. Don't expect this person to do what we've been elected to do. Help them to do better at it.
For $100,000 a year, I expect you to do your job.
Right.
The only thing, and again, I'm a soft yes. I think the difference that we're looking at here is whether the Village of New Haven wants to maintain or doesn't want to go forward. We can pave the roads and make sure the lights are on and make sure that the streets aren't bubbling up with water. But do we want a fresh set of eyes that has had experience in college education in this field? They would have maybe a new sense of direction, would be able to look at how we're functioning with a new set of eyes. There might be cost-saving measures they could implement. There might be grants. We're also looking at a new representative to the county and the state at large. This person will be tasked with representing New Haven and going out and saying we're open for business. And we're doing that on a level here, some level here, but this is the guy's job. Now if you look at, let's just say for example, Patrick Reagan. Look at his resume and look at some of the stuff that he's done that would enable him to come here and say, well, yeah, I went to a conference, and this is how they're doing it in Grand Rapids, or this is how they're doing it in the village of Metamora. He does the capital improvement plan. That's, we're working on that. He acquired a $200,000 Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant for improvements to a campground. I went to a seminar on that grant. Anybody can apply for it. I think the minimum grant that was discussed there was $40,000 to improve playgrounds. There's more than one source to look for to get money for the village. His job is to look for things like that. He's not worried with, putting his head together, well, no, he's gonna have to, with the DPW up roads and everything. He's gonna have to do that as well, but these managers have the education for the job, they have the experience for the job, they have the networking for the job. There might be best practices that he's used in, for example, this guy worked in Crystal Falls, I have no idea where that's at. UP, okay. Portland, Michigan. He worked for Ionia County. He's familiar with their practices. Maybe he could bring something new to the table, a fresh set of eyes. We're not signing this deal for 5 years. There's going to be a probationary period. So if it's not working out, if he's not performing to our expectations, we don't see any new way of doing things, cost savings, looking at the budget, then we can always say, hey, you know what, we could do this on our own. And there's always that escape plan. But I think right now, New Haven is at a crossroads. This community is thriving. This community has overcome a lot of obstacles, like Amtrak, where people are now, when they talk about New Haven now, they're not going, New Haven. This council and this leadership has affected that change. Now, like I said, you can keep the lights on and you can keep the roads patched, but do we want to look into going further? And I think this might give us an opportunity with the understanding if it doesn't work out, we can always tell them, gee, thanks, but, $100,000, nobody takes that lightly. Nobody takes that lightly. This guy's going to have to do everything short of flying around with a cape, for us to say, well, this was money well spent. But, I don't know, do we want to go forward or do we want to maintain? I think this might be one of the opportunities we have to see if maybe we could do a little better. And if I'm right.
I agree with that. I hate to bounce back, but I agree with that. I think if we are going to get this person, we should have the goal to go higher, to do better, and I think that means development. So I think there should be an emphasis on attracting development, whether it be a subdivision, whether it be a solar development or something that was previously discussed at a different meeting. Whatever the case may be, we need to look for more. If we're just going to be kind of fine-tuning what we already have, I definitely would not advise to do this. But then that would be a stronger no. But if we're going to do it, we gotta look to bring stuff to this village to get something more going.
And part of my concern, especially with the development, is just because we hire a village manager doesn't mean development's going to spring up all over the village. A lot of that is market driven. No one person can affect that. So,
No, you're wrong.
What's that?
One person can't affect that.
Well, if there's no market to build houses, he can build houses, but
No, but part of their job is to market the community they represent. And there are village managers that are responsible for strip malls, village managers that are responsible for new housing, Yeah, village managers sometimes can turn a community around, but,
well, I'm saying for the most part, they are market driven.
Right now.
Where that small part of the market is, yeah, a guy can affect that, but in the larger picture, you can't turn the housing market around.
No.
And start and make New Haven.
but if there is business out there, he can encourage it to.
Right now, from a marketing standpoint, they know about us. Okay? Trust me when I say, I've met and talked with developers in the Midwest. They know about us. The biggest obstacle that continues to come up is traffic or lack of. We're at that 12, 13,000 vehicles, and they're looking for 20. almost every potential commercial developer, they're looking for that 20,000. And where is that, I mean, and these are county numbers where they do the traffic studies, and we're at that 12, 13,000. And for as many cars I see go by, if I was a dog, I'd be, I'm like, boy, we're just not, there's just not the traffic. I mean, you know, and that's why things are stopping at 23. Even Chesterfield, when you come up Gratiot, and once you get past 24-mile road, it stops. Because the traffic just doesn't support, I mean, you know, they have a prime corner right here, 26 and Gratiot, that you thought would have boomed by now. Okay? And it's stopping the other way, you know? I mean, it's, and you know, that's not to say that there isn't that developer out there that, yeah, you know, this is a good starting point. You know, let's take a chance on New Haven. Let's take a chance on the Golden Triangle out here. So they know about us. Trust me when I say these developers and these potential developers, they do know about us. Okay, we made sure of that. But, you know, they just, I don't know what it's going to take to get them to put the shovel on the ground.
I think I'll just say a couple of words. I mean, nobody is doubtful of where I stand, obviously. I've made it pretty clear. Is $100,000 a big chunk of change? Yes, absolutely, it is. There's no question about it. Is it money well spent? You won't know that yet, right? Do I think they're going to double up on things? No, I don't think that's the intent of the village manager. If you look at what we pay the attorney, if you look at what we pay Plant Moran, I mean, we pay the attorney $8,000 a month. We paid Plant Moran $8,000 a month before we went from Plant Moran to Brian to whatever, to whoever, to then finally Sandy, right? But each of those were $96,000 a year, all right? And that's geared towards one specific thing that we need as a village to thrive, right? Or at least sustain where we're at. Now, if we want the momentum, do we need to have somebody who can push that momentum? And that absolutely is a yes. Now, when we talk about consistency, I don't necessarily talk about consistency from a fact of terms. I talk about consistency, somebody's there in the office 8 to 5. They oversee all of those departments. If a department has an issue, they're going to get an answer. And this is to no disrespect to the president, but there is more consistency on a day-to-day routine basis, right? So that's an 8 to 5. And even if that person got turned over in 1 to 3 years, you still have that structure in place. I would also look at what we've lost because of that structure not being in place. Meaning, maybe prior to your presidency, things that were set in motion from other presidents, other councils, things like that, that are still costing us to this day. Whether it be from this perspective, this building perspective, or whether it be from the litigations we've had to worry about, or whatever it may be, there could have been there could have been what ifs, and there could be what ifs going forward. I mean, we can't sit there and say something would have happened had we have had a village manager, and I would never sit here and say that. But what I would say is that you talk about they know about us, but we've got to build relationships out there. Guys, we don't have those relationships in place, those strong threshold relationships, whether it be a direct conduit to the county, whether it be to other builders, I mean, whether it be to other economic development, whether it be to other stores. I mean, honestly, if medical marijuana would have went the other way, you guys would have needed somebody in place to jump through the hoops of those laws, to figure out how to identify and navigate what was about to come down the passage, right? There's no way any one of us would have been able to navigate that. Absolutely not. There's no way. You would have had to have hired a consultant or something to navigate those so that we avoided additional litigation or some other issue down the pipeline. I would say that, if we look at the fact of just cost-saving initiative, there's an opportunity where we could put some other structures, some other HR policies in place that would allow us to not necessarily siphon out money other ways, right? We would have that structure, that checks and balance, and we would have that opportunity to make sure that some of those programs, policies, and procedures that are in place are at least protecting us all the way through, right? I would also say that it's effective government in the sense of having somebody that can then go out and be that conduit on a consistent routine basis. Because if you look at even something as small as Centerline's even smaller than we are, and they have a city manager. So it doesn't necessarily based on size, it's based on what you want to make of it and the opportunity you want to exist with it. What you want to pursue, what you want to push, and where you want to move forward. That downtown, the economy has turned around, right? 2008 it crashed. There's no way we could have probably done this in 2008, 2010, 2012, 2014. But the economy is good, and there are opportunities out there. Whether we've gotten all the grant money that we could possibly muster or get, we don't know that yet. But I'm not resting my laurels on whether or not this person's going to go out and get grant money. You've got to look at the big picture. You've got to look at the whole abstract picture of what this person has the ability to do for any organization. If you look at 501c3s, those usually have an executive director, followed by a board, followed by people that donate to that. Trustee Vanderkerkhoff said development. There's not only the development of a house, there's development of people investing in you, right? You got to go out and fundraise. You got to go out, and I don't mean fundraise like they donate to the Village of New Haven. I mean that you go out and essentially you build those relationships so that people do come to you. And we all have that responsibility to some degree, but I'm telling you that you have a person that you're putting out there in that fundamental structure to then recoup the benefits, and those benefits could be a myriad of things. So you have to just realize that it's not going to be, it may not be $100,000 the first year in a grant to support the payment of that individual. And I think that's it. I think I'm done.
Any other comments?
Tiny bit passionate about it. Sorry.
I'm a hard-ish no, and I'm a hard-ish because I want things to look good. And everything you're saying looks and sounds great, but if you look at, just from a financial point of view, I don't see it. The risk, reward, I don't see it being there.
That's what I love about us. We can just debate respectfully.
That is one thing that I would say, that article in Macomb Daily did take me off, and it referred to this board as being scarred.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have some scars, but.
Well, that was the feds. They said it's scarred local government.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job. Which one? I think item F.
Well, I think you might as well move F down because with the profiles, because if you're not gonna.
Yeah, if we don't approve to do the village manager, then what's the point of talking about it?
Right, yeah. Okay, then let's go to G.
Now, can we do the attorney, Addis?
Yes, sir.
Can we do that tonight?
Can you do what?
Approval to hire village manager.
Well, generally speaking, yes, you can approve anything. But what stays out there is just the statutory duties or extra duties or what duties. Okay, this isn't as easy as we would all have hoped if you guys want to go that way.
Why don't we define the duties first, have them incorporated into the ordinance, review the ordinance before the next meeting, and then vote? Does that make sense?
That would be very orderly. I would agree that would be very orderly, which means that you would have to decide what are the duties and what aren't the duties. Okay, understanding that that's going to be part of that contract that you sign with this person if you go in this direction. Also, if I may bring it up, you mentioned that there's a, you know, if it doesn't work out, you know, you get rid of them, well, that's gotta be part of the contract too. You can't sign someone to 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, throw them out in 30 days and not pay the rest of the contract. All you gotta do is ask any professional team that made the wrong draft choice. Those release periods have to be in the contract also. Now, a lot of people who are, if they're going to relocate, okay, to take a job, want some guaranteed time. And there's nothing wrong with that because they've sold homes or whatever and moved in. So there's a lot to be considered there as to what you want in the contract. A lot of good points made pro and con here. I don't have an opinion. I work for both types of people. But if you're going to put this together and vote to do it, you better have an idea exactly what you're voting for. Can you do it tonight and say, yeah, we want to hire someone? Yeah. Can you do it and say, why don't we put together the main duties and I'll put it in an ordinance for you? You can do that too.
Are we interpreting G as,
It was just for the council to move forward with
not a particular
the
individual?
process. Correct.
Not
Just
an
the
individual,
process.
just the process.
But we've taken that vote before.
Essentially.
Sort of, kind of, but not really. 'cause
So
it's just
hire
a
our
village
people.
manager we have now.
We voted to do the RFP, so I guess, I don't know, why don't we
I thought that's what
do?
this meeting was for, right?
Yeah, why don't we can have the vote to actually move forward with the process. If it passes, then we talk about what are the duties, what are the, and all that. And then, as long as we can get concurrence on that, then we can have Attorney Addis work on having that all incorporated into the ordinance.
No, I'm fine with
One of the questions that I do want to pose is, state law requires the clerk, the treasurer, the president to perform certain duties. I saw a tilt of the head. I'm not interpreting that tilt. Is that a true statement?
That's a true statement.
Okay. And then we talked about an ordinance which could remove some of those duties from those three individuals.
You can delegate those duties away under the statute.
Okay. And let's say we do. We take some of those duties away from the clerk, treasurer, and the president. And then we put in place a manager. We put in place an ordinance, and then we put in place a manager. And in the event that after 6 months that manager is terminated or quits, are those duties automatically revert back to those three individuals?
It's a good question. My answer would be, my belief would be they would, or there could be the board could vote to find a new manager and have those apply to that new manager.
Well, let's say that's another 90-day process.
I would say that they would revert by statute back to the people who hold the statutory position.
Who would put a clause in there, just,
You see where I'm going?
like a clause.
Okay,
If
I
at
suddenly
any
don't want
time
to get out
this
of practice and then
position is
suddenly-
See,
vacated.
this is, here, let me just say this as best I can. Villages are unique in Michigan. Villages have an executive with some powers. They have a clerk, and all clerks have powers, but the clerks have powers. And even though there are village managers, the president has an executive power, the clerk has the same clerk powers that everybody else has, and that's a very powerful position. The treasurer has powers, the board members have powers. So when you're creating, if we had had a ordinance that already had us a manager, this would be easy. We thought we did, and we don't. So all of these are questions that have to be answered and eventually put into a contract. Now, if you were to vote tonight to say, we want to do what we can do to get a village manager, you can hold that vote. You can even say we want to approve a village manager, but then I would have to do an ordinance and you'd have to approve that ordinance. okay? I mean, it's just not an easy process. If you haven't, but if you decide not to approve a village manager, that ends here. Does that make any sense? I mean, you can move forward, you can wait till we do an ordinance and then retake this up as to whether you want a village manager or not. This is a big move for a village. And as I said, I've worked for both types, depends on the times, the economics and everything. There's a reason the statute exists that allows this. Okay, so can you vote for it tonight to have one? Yes. Will it mean much? Not until we define it. I think that's obvious to everyone. If you want to make some sort of motion to move forward, do you want me to do drafts of things that have several different types of powers to the manager? I guess we could do that based on what other villages do. We're not reinventing the wheel, as Ms. Pridemore said.
What I would like though is to have, this process is taking too long. What's the liability if we vote to hire a village manager, then we don't like the ordinance, and then one of the applicants comes up and says, but you voted to hire one? Is there a liability there?
Well, there's anybody with $150 and a lawyer can file a lawsuit.
Okay, but there is a liability there.
Yeah, well, yeah, anybody with $150 and
All right.
can file a lawsuit. Do I think it's a strong case? I don't know, because I've never seen one before.
Would it be more safe to get the ordinance first, then approve to hire? I think we pretty much have an idea of the two candidates. It's not like it's going to be a long process if it doesn't move forward. But would you recommend that we adopt the ordinance, then make a motion to hire, and then go from there?
That would be the more orderly fashion, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Okay? Now, along those lines, if you're down to two, they can give you some ideas what to put in there. But I think if you just say we're gonna hire one, and then you don't, there might be some problems about that.
Okay. So can I make a recommendation that we shift the conversation as briefly as possible to expect the duties of a village manager, to format an ordinance, and then those that want to vote no, but we still like your input on what, if we did hire a village manager, what you'd like to see the duties be incorporated into the ordinance.
Well, okay, let me interrupt a second. If you want to move forward, you should have a vote whether to move forward with the process. Yes or no, because if it's a no, you're done. Okay, you know, like the test, if you answer no to this, you're done.
Define
You
the
get to go home.
process.
Yeah, okay. Now, in other words, if the majority here doesn't want to hire a village manager, this would end now. If the majority wants to, then we would have to go into
The other stuff.
developing the other stuff.
What, can I ask, before you do that, sorry, one more point of clarification. On the delegation of powers though, the delegation of duties, even though you're delegating the duties, doesn't mean the previous people lose those duties that were incumbent on the position itself. So if they get an administrative opportunity to hire, fire, things like that, it doesn't mean Chris loses that, does that?
Sure does.
If you're delegating the powers out?
Well, if you delegate the president's powers to someone else, they have the power. A city manager, a village manager, answers only to the board. There's nothing in the statute that says he has any answerability to the clerk, the president, or the treasurer.
But he does answer to the board.
He answers only to the board.
We can't delegate and take back our will.
You can't. And now, let's talk about the board.
It's not exactly.
How many members are there of this board?
Right.
Okay, and you take the president out, okay, now you got voting problems. I mean, he answers only to the board. Now, some people consider that good.
Mhm.
Some people consider that bad. Okay, but if you delegate the president's powers to him, you can't take them back.
But if you delegate them with the intent that the president still also has that power, right? I mean, what is the difference in, I guess I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here.
Two can't have the power to hire a fire.
Two can't have the power to hire a fire?
I'm gonna fire you.
No.
I said yes, he said no. That just wouldn't work.
Okay.
You see, the village.
And I'm not opposed to that model, I'm trying to figure out what we do after the fact, so that's why I just wanted to clarify.
I spent a lot of time researching this and didn't charge because that's in my contract. This is not easy.
Yeah,
You have a president, which is a strong executive position,
right,
okay? If you delegate, if you want the city manager to be out there hiring and firing, then you have to take that away from the president.
gotcha. Okay,
If you want them to do the treasurer's work, you gotta take it away from the treasurer.
right,
If you want them to do the clerk's work, you gotta take it away from the clerk.
Sure.
That's why it's got specific. The clerk does these things. Well, now we're gonna give it to this person.
right,
Clerk loses it. They don't stay bilateral.
right. Got it.
It's cumbersome unless you develop it really strictly first.
Sure.
Those are, sorry. Well, those are responsibilities, like actual duties required to be done by them. They can, however, I would assume, such as was mentioned as Monday meetings or whatever the case was, they could take on that because it's not necessarily a responsibility, it's something that they're doing to better.
They can take on an administrative, on Monday mornings, somebody's out of town, and that's fine, but that's not spelled out in the statute that a president has to have Monday morning meetings or a clerk or a treasurer.
Yeah, nobody likes this Monday morning.
God, I don't know why they pick Monday. Pick Tuesday.
Tuesday morning meetings.
I love Monday, even after a Lions football game.
Oh, finally, one, yeah.
Yeah, the Patriots.
All right.
So here's where we stand. Just leave it. If there's a motion to move forward, in whatever words you want to do it, to hire a president, if it passes, then we got all the other problems to jump through. If it doesn't pass, you're done.
They already passed the draft ordinance.
Well, draft an ordinance, but I can draft an ordinance.
So the next step should be, to answer the question, the approval to hire a village manager.
Approval of the process,
To move forward in the process.
Move forward the process.
not to hire.
So
Okay.
I motion for the council to move forward with the process of hiring a village manager by determining the duties, setting forth what we want in the ordinance, and then having Attorney Addis put together an ordinance that we can vote on at the next council meeting. I think I got it all.
I got it.
Second.
Then moved and supported that we do what Mr. Meissen said. Move forward with the process.
Right.
Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Madison,
Yes.
Trustee Chandler,
Yes.
Trustee Burkholly,
No.
Trustee Gurke,
No.
Trustee Haziak,
Yes.
Trustee Frymer,
Yes,
President Hilbert.
No. Motion carried. Fourth reading.
So next,
Next question, which one
I think it would be discussing the duties.
yeah, let's discuss the duties really quick so we give them a direction. The sample ordinance that I downloaded from MML, we got 5 of them. There are so many communities that have managers. 205 villages in the state of Michigan, 56 of them have managers, so village managers aren't a new concept. It's very generic terms, but it kind of defines what they do, and the last section says, perform other duties required as time to time by village council. So it would be a fluid ordinance, and it should be a fluid contract, okay? very generic things, and most of the things that they talk about have the caveat with council approval. So we don't have some guy out there like the Wild West doing what he wants. For example, number 1, to appoint, suspend, or remove appointed administrative officers and department heads, subject to council approval. And they're going to recommend wages and salaries as part of contract negotiations. Exercise supervisory control over all departments, including departments of public works, the fire department. Exercise supervisory responsibility over accounting, budgeting, personnel, purchasing, related management functions of the village clerk and the village treasurer, but isn't it defined by law? Unless we appoint. I don't think he determines, isn't it? If we say she's going to keep her job and she's going to keep her job, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't tell them, that's defined by law.
Their positions aren't defined by law.
But they're
But you
doing
can
something.
delegate their
Yeah.
position away. This is what I'm trying to.
Okay, well, that's easy peasy. They keep this, they keep their job.
Okay.
But it's also budgeting, being the purchase agent, prepare and maintain written policies and procedures, investigate all complaints, make recommendations to the council for the adoption of such measures as may be deemed necessary or expedient for the improvement or betterment of the village. These are all kind of generic caveats in an ordinance or a contract. But, you know, we can certainly type down the language. What it's saying basically is we're hiring a village supervisor. He does personnel, he does budgeting, we could have Sandy retain her job. He would be responsible for working with Sandy to prepare the budget and presenting it to council. I mean, there are certain defined duties that each village does, not that many of them. And this sample ordinance kind of hits the nail on the head. So, you know, what other duties are there besides preparing the budget, working with personnel, going to meetings, being the representative for the village, maintaining membership in Michigan Municipal League, being the representative for the village for SEMCOG? You know, can anybody think of anything else?
That sounds like $100,000 to me.
Nothing sounds like $100,000 to you. If we tried to hire a guy for $25,000, you'd vote no. So we, but can anybody else, again, this is not reinventing the wheel. There are set duties in each community. And I don't see it would be that difficult to draft an ordinance. As long as we can all agree that the clerk maintains her position, the treasurer maintains her position. I don't see what the problem is.
I don't think that was ever the intention.
Well,
I think
I'm not going to say whether it's easy or hard because I've never had to draft one, but I found that to be rather generic rather than specific.
do we want
And the law
specifics?
requires that you have to specifically give away or retain duties.
Then all you say is, the clerk shall retain her duties. The treasurer shall retain his or her duties.
Well, I'm a little confused that
What about
that was
the
even brought up, because I don't know anywhere in the process that we brought up about taking away clerk and treasurer duties.
You want to take away a lot of the president's duties.
From a.
Well, he's the chief administrator, and we're looking to hire a chief
I
administrator.
think duties is,
I mean-
responsibility and duties, I think we gotta clarify that, because I think, again, it gets back to what are they actually responsible for, and what would we like them to do, you know, without it being necessarily, duty. So duty a lot there.
I mean, the clerk and the duties of the clerk and the treasurer are defined in the GOB, General Village Law. Easy to look up, of 1895. Could we update this, please? But the clerk is the clerk of record. The clerk does this, 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 and it's very easy to exclude those duties. All you can say is, the village manager will not be responsible for the duties of the clerk as outlined in the General Village Law Act. It's a simple enough caveat. The treasurer's duties are defined. The treasurer, we could say, the duties as defined in the General Village Law Act. I don't think that, I know I wouldn't feel comfortable hiring somebody and saying, oh, by the way, you're gonna be doing that job, you're gonna be doing that job, and why don't you run DPW while you're at it? You know,
Okay,
So-
we're leaving a recognized statutory officer out. What about the president's duties?
well,
That's what,
yeah, that's the one that we should really, I guess, kind of focus on, is, do we want this person in charge of personnel, hiring and firing? Do we want this person in charge of, wait a minute, with the General Village Law Act, the duties of the president, what? Somebody have their, you got your pad up, and there we go.
Did you ever get the RFP? Did you see the RFP?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's essentially spelled out what we're looking for.
I get that, but that's
Yeah.
different than when you create the ordinance that actually says with the 45-day requirements and letting know what's been changed from the basic law. It's got, and you don't have to decide this tonight,
Right.
okay? Because this will take a while to look into and decide.
Sure.
But when you take someone's powers away, you gotta specifically take it from one and give it to another. You can't just generally say, well, we'd like everybody to work together and have fun. And we don't want the clerk to lose any powers, we don't want the treasurer to lose any powers, but we want the manager to be able to do this. Okay, well, let's say the clerk and the manager disagree.
Was that spelled out in the previous ordinance? The relinquish of powers?
No.
But it now has to be put in
Yes,
the
it now
ordinance?
has to.
And that's due to a change in the village law act?
Change the Village Law Act and decisions of the courts and whatever. You know, it all works together, but quite frankly, you have to delineate a manager's powers. Very specifically, if you're taking them away from elected officials.
Yeah, I understand that part.
I
One
think
of the
that,
prob,
oh, sorry, go.
one of the problems as I see it, that when you give the manager powers, you have to remember that in some of the power that they must receive is the power to remind elected officials that they're possibly being derelict in their duties. And that is a touchy subject. I mean, if I had a situation where the clerk was not performing her duty, it's my responsibility to let her know that.
Well, we'll keep that with you.
Okay? No, I just want that.
You get that, you get to keep that.
That's the one you get to keep.
So,
See what I'm saying? So when you take the powers away, now you're asking the appointed official to be overseers of elected officials. And that just does not bode well.
here's what I would say to that. We could guess all night. We need the duties of the president, the clerk, and the treasurer to define whether or not we're gonna take some of those away or not, right? And if the village law act spells out each of those duties, then we need them in front of us, because we can't sit here.
I think that's a really,
We can sit here and speculate all night.
legal opinion, that's a great one.
Right, so we need the duties in front of us, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's the committee gets together to propose, or if everybody needs to be in that conversation, because that, all it would be a proposal, based on, and I will tell you right now, based on previous current written ordinances from the other 56 villages or other townships, so we can actually look at a peer-to-peer, format, right? So what has been done before, what's been done well, from that ordinance perspective. And I would like to see previous ordinances that have been written, let's say the last 5 years,
Happen.
that this is too old though, based on what the attorney's saying.
Well,
He's
no,
saying
a lot
that
of the
now,
language in there now is reflected in current language.
Not all of it goes away, but some of it
Yeah.
does. But
but
we,
you're saying now we have to put those duties in the ordinance? We have to spell that out,
you're gonna
right?
sign a contract with someone.
Right,
And one day you may want to, that person may say, well, I'm sorry, you gave me this power and then you took it away.
right.
Or I took this job based on you giving me this power and I don't really have it. So if you're going to sign it, see, the village law act makes you make a manager subject to a contract up to 6 years. Doesn't have to be 6 years.
Right.
Here's a copy of the sample ordinance.
And so you have
I've seen
to,
this one.
when that person signs a contract, now the village is subject to being a contractual party.
Absolutely.
And if that person decides that the village has somehow breached its contract and somehow took a power away, then you face liability from that person. Okay?
I think you need to differentiate between the ordinance and the contract.
Well, no, I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, you can.
Well, you can differentiate, but if the ordinance says I have this power, but it's not in the contract, he doesn't have that power.
Right.
If the ordinance says he doesn't have the power, but the contract says he does, he will argue he has that power.
And if the ordinance says other duties as assigned and the contract says other duties as assigned, you have fluidity.
I don't know if contract and fluidity should be used in the same sentence.
They can be.
Well, unfortunately, they can, and that's what leads to contract lawsuits.
But if you reserve the right to amend or adjust duties with council, majority council approval, and the person accepts that language, then that's on them. If they don't like the majority of the council voting, you have to paint all the bathrooms yellow.
Oh, I'm just trying to understand. If you're saying that we can say, here's your duties and when you start, but we can change them at any time.
And that's standard contract language,
That's
management's
not
rights.
standard contract language in my practice. It might be in yours, but not in
Oh,
mine.
there's labor.
But if that, well, I've done my labor work, I'm not trying to argue here, but if you're going to do the contract correctly, don't create fluidity. Make it clear. And it's not fluidity if you say, we can amend it at any time for any reason. That's not fluidity, that's the right to amend.
Right, but, well, that's, okay, let's call it that.
Okay.
The right to
Then
amend.
we're fine with that.
Yeah, standard contract language, management's rights. If we decide to add a duty like SEMCOG representative for the village, you want to maintain that language, you know yourself, you've written enough of them, where the management has the right, or the village has the right to amend duties as they see fit. Things may come up. Things are always coming up.
If you have a person willing to do that, that will work.
But that language can be reflected both in the ordinance and in the contract.
It's okay, but it's gotta be both.
Okay,
Then we don't get sued.
okay.
Because
We
I
don't
know
like
how
getting
much you
sued.
guys don't like getting sued.
We don't like getting sued.
Does anybody?
You think that'd keep us away from that?
So we have, the language of as designated by council and/or as delegated by clerk, treasurer, president, is that something that could be in of some sort?
Here's, I guess, off the top of my head, because this is new to all of us here in this village, I can put together some ideas as to what can be delegated, what can't be delegated, how you delegate them, how you do not delegate them, present it in a reasonable amount of time, and say, what is it you want to retain to the board and to the president and to the clerk and to the treasurer? And what is it that you want to delegate to a manager?
Sounds good.
Isn't that it?
Sounds good.
I mean, isn't that what we want to do?
That's what we
Well,
want to do.
do we want to have the professional committee get that recommendation, work with the attorney on formatting? Do we want to do that?
You're saying professional committee that does RFPs, or
Well, you guys, you three guys met, right? You've been
you're talking
handling
about
this.
the committee that's.
She's calling us professional.
No, no, you professionals. what do
That's
I
what
know?
confused
I
me.
wanted to.
Which is crazy.
The bar is low.
She's doing it.
The bar is low. No, but we're,
On camera.
yeah. In front of God and everybody. No, but do you guys want to work with the attorney, have him, if he wants to run some stuff past you guys, say, yeah, we want to present this to council? Yes, no?
I would say absolutely. The only thing is the timeline, right? So if we're trying to do something for the October, what is it?
Ninth?
9th? Yeah, what's your schedule look like?
Well, I mean, that will be difficult only because it's a lot of things to uncover. I want to go look at all these communities and these contracts, so I can give you that. That might be a little tight. I can try. It might be a little tight. I don't have any trials coming, but that still might be a little tight.
I think you're going to find out the first couple of contracts, there's a lot of commonalities.
And I hope you're right.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
At the very
I don't
least,
need to reinvent anything.
at the very least, can you
You
get
don't need
us,
the word.
get us those contracts right away? If you can get the previous ones, other ones that you've seen, the other ordinances, you can just at least get those to us right away. Now, your proposals, as you see based on our specific village, that could take a little bit longer, but hopefully we'd still get that prior to that, that meeting.
And you guys can also Google the bananas on a village contract.
Oh, yeah.
State of Michigan, and the PDFs are online.
They're everywhere.
And we should still get together. I think that should happen between now and the next meeting. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, sure. I'd just like to have something a little more concrete.
Not you.
I'm saying for you guys to get the information.
Right.
I know, I've never, you know, I shower, I shave, and they never.
I function as a human being and look where it gets me.
I want to bring up another point here real quick, because in the relatively short time frame that we decided, hey, let's pursue this, put the RFP out, got some responses, and up to this point, actually up to a month ago or so, already 2 out of 4 candidates have dropped out because they got a promotion within or a better offer. That's one of the main reasons why, again, I'm a no vote, but it sounds like I'm in the minority, and that's fine. Let's get this done. Let's get this done.
Amen.
Yeah, I just feel like we're just banging our
And
heads
we
against
might
the
lose this guy, and then what? Then we're starting over.
Back to posting it at a cheaper rate.
But if there's anything you've ever learned about municipal government is that you don't rush,
Right.
right? So
we have-
some of these things could take 2 years. Some of them could take 5. I mean,
You're gonna run into this problem when you do interviews and you don't even know what you're gonna have them do, right? So, I mean, this is kind of on us if we're,
I think we should be able to speak poignantly, and I agree with you. We should be able to be poignant in any direct questions, things like that. To say that we did the due process. I mean, I'm all about transparency and making sure our residents are well aware of everything that we're doing and saying and maintaining and educating them on top of what we're doing. We just have to. Like, that's just the nature of this. So I'm okay with that, but we can help expedite some stuff between now and then. I have no doubt that we can help expedite. So your point is well taken, Trustee V. You know, obviously from our perspective, we've been working on this for 4 months. So it's not like,
It's not on you guys.
no, I know, but I'm just saying, like,
Right.
if anybody wants to see it through, we do, but we also want it to be very crystallized, and we also want it to be transparent as it crystallizes. So
Yeah.
I agree with the attorney as well, in making sure that we are, you know, looking at this stuff from that fine and minute aspect, you know, through a magnifying glass, making sure those T's are crossed, I's dotted. So here's what I would say. If you can get us a couple of those ordinances by email, previous ordinances by email in the next day or 2, that would be fantastic. That would get the ball rolling for us. We'll figure out a time to meet either after this meeting or,
And we can easily, like you said, Google contracts.
right.
And bring them together.
And we can always Zoom
We have a general idea of when we want this
or
person.
set a meeting. You know, we could Zoom in, so,
Right.
So based on that,
right.
are we doing anything else tonight? Or is this
Yeah, 3 people.
the next step?
You are skipping H completely. Nothing's gonna happen with H. We've already done G. We don't need the candidate profiles because for the most part, we've sent them all out and we've talked about them. So those are fine. We don't even need to touch on that.
what agenda item are we on right now?
We're done, essentially, from an agenda perspective. Until call from the floor. That was that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we locked in on one candidate?
That's ordinances.
I would never say anything like that. I wouldn't say until the due process has taken place, because even if we were, there's no thought that candidate would
Ordinance
stick.
affecting
right?
operation of the village.
So, but I've also been in interview processes myself where I've got the job 3 months later.
Presented at an open meeting.
They just disappeared off the face of the earth and called me one day, so.
When I took the class.
Yeah, and I guess just a point of clarification, I guess my frustration or why I say I feel like we're banging our head against the walls, that just question where was all this guidance 4 months ago when we decided to do the RFP? I mean, this is all stuff we should have been talking about 4 months ago.
Well, hold on. An RFP is a request for a proposal, okay? Once you see the proposals and you see what's available, I was not asked, or I would have given an opinion as to what it would take to make a village president. If you got a bunch of proposals that you looked at and went, oh my God, we don't want any of these people, you save the work, the time, the money, the effort. Now you think there's people out there that can help you. now's the time to do that. It won't take that much longer. This village has been around a long time. And I think if you're going to make this big change and delegate powers, you do it in an orderly fashion. It shouldn't be done overnight, and if I can give another legal opinion, based on experience, don't create the ordinance for a person that's already in the back of your mind, because they can leave anytime they want.
Oh, absolutely. Should we
But
reach
I'll
out?
work with you as fast as I can.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
If these three guys exchange emails and information, and then they present that information in an open meeting, their exchange of information, is that a violation of the Open Meetings Act?
Could be.
Okay.
Okay. It's very different. I disagree with this one. I mean, if I were to change anything in the world, I would change that. It creates problems for everybody in electronic communications. We've had this problem in
Good
Oak
thing is we
Township,
don't
we've had this
communicate
problem
electronically.
everywhere else. You start to send emails, and pretty soon, a majority of people are in on the email. Now you have an Open Meetings Act complaint, and now it goes to the prosecutor, and you have trouble. Now, I'm vastly opposed to that, but I can't tell you a lie. If somebody complains, I don't know how they find out, but if they find out and complain, you're in trouble.
Well, no, we want everything above board.
Of course.
Yeah, we're not looking
But you're
at-
right, how do you get things done?
If it's just those three, how would it be the majority?
If it's just three, it doesn't. But when they can include a fourth or a fifth,
We don't.
that's where it gets over.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Or if we just meet and hold it as a workshop, right?
Or call each other on the phone. That still works.
But three can do it, not four.
Right, we can do it. That's why the committee's always been already, so that we didn't violate the Open Meetings Act.
Okay,
Just let me think, right?
Right.
all right. So, with that being said, call from the floor. Call from the table.
Motion to
Motion in
adjourn.
order.
Motion to
Support.
adjourn.
Second.